Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a horror film, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with the arrival of a medical practitioner at the house of the Rose family. He is about to examine the death of Emily. As he enters the house, the Rose family seems to be in a depressed condition. Their faces tell us a sad story even without uttering a single word. The house is full of silence as he walks upon the hallways of the house. At his arrival at Emily's room, a priest named Father Moore comes out in silence while looking at him. Then a police officer guides him towards the room. A few moments after, he announces to the Rose family that he is unable to determine the natural cause of Emily's death. Meanwhile, Father Moore is seemingly looking at a blank slate on a barn house. Then the police officer politely tells Father Moore that he needs to come to the police. Meanwhile, the state officials are having a meeting on choosing a lawyer to prosecute Father Moore for Emily's death during the exorcism. The state officials choose a religious lawyer known as a man of God as the lead prosecutor of the case to show the people that they are unbiased. At the same time, in a cozy bar, a bald guy offers a lady defense attorney to defend Father Moore from the state prosecutors. However, the defense attorney seems to be reluctant to handle the case. In response, the bald guy convinces her by telling her that the church wants her to handle the case. This means that it will boost her career. In the end, the defense attorney agrees to handle the case. The following day, the defense attorney visits Father Moore in his jail to convince him to accept the bargain deal. However, Father Moore holds firm to his decision to testify at the trial. It appears that he wants to let the public know Emily's story. In response, the defense attorney lets him testify at a trial. The next day, the trial begins with an opening statement from the state lawyer. In the opening statement, he states that the prosecution will prove that Father Moore, in an exorcism ritual, has been negligent, depriving Emily of the medical attention she needs. Then he shows a photograph of a happy Emily, in contrast to her horrifying condition right before her death. After that, an old woman closely related to Emily comes to testify. She tells the jury that she receives a call from Emily on the telephone. In the call, Emily was sobbing in tears, telling her what had happened. As it appears, Emily woke up alone in her dormitory at 3 a.m. as she smelled something burning outside. It was during this time that an invincible force seemed to attack her. At the same time, the things around her started moving, and suddenly there was an invincible force controlling her body. She began to have unusual movements. As the attack stopped, she ran outside of the room sobbing in fear. After that, the university neurologist testifies. In his testimony, he conducts a test on Emily after the unusual movements of her body. The test reveals that Emily might have epilepsy. Additionally, he narrates that Father Moore stops Emily from going back to the treatment, thinking that her condition is something spiritual. However, the defense attorney intervenes in the narration of the neurologist. She questions the certainty of the diagnosis, since epilepsy does not include hallucinations such as seeing things move. In the end, the neurologist agrees to the defense attorney's suggestion that it is uncertain whether Emily has epilepsy or psychosis. Later that day, the defense attorney visits Father Moore in the jail cell. There, Father Moore tells her what happened to Emily after the midnight incident. As it appears, Emily is taken to the hospital to be given medical care. Despite the medical attention given, the demonic force continues to attack her. It seems that an invisible force is controlling her body in an unusual movement. The following day, the state lawyer presents the testimony of a medical expert that examines Emily's death. The medical expert agrees with the findings of the university neurologist that Emily has epilepsy and psychosis. He thinks that it is a combination of both. Additionally, he thinks that the decision of Father Moore to stop the treatment contributes to Emily's death. The drug prescribed by the doctor could have helped to save her life. At the end of his testimony, it seems that the defense attorney is frustrated that she cannot counter the medical case presented by the state lawyer. Later that day, the assistant informs the defense attorney that he fails to find a medical expert who can counter the medical explanations presented in court. At this moment, she suggests that they will present the case of Father Moore by finding loopholes to the medical explanation of Emily's death. Instead of medical explanations, she will attempt to validate exorcism to the court through an explanation from an anthropologist. At the next trial, the defense attorney presents her opening statement, where she tells the jury that Emily's condition is not a medical one, and that Emily is not suffering from epilepsy or psychosis. In addition, she firmly tells the jury that what happens to Emily is indeed a demonic possession. This means that Emily needs a spiritual intervention, which completely justifies the actions of Father Moore. After that, Emily's friend testifies that Emily continues to experience hallucinations, despite taking the medication offered by the doctors. He witnesses Emily in an unusual pose during the night. Then she started to scream at him. This made him bring Emily to their home. Then, Emily's father testifies what happens to Emily in their home. At the arrival of Father Moore, Emily was in a rage and started eating creepy insects on the floor. Then she started to scratch the wall as if a tiger possessed her. In response, Emily's father and Father Moore stopped Emily from her rage. In a few moments, she started to speak in different languages as she talked to Father Moore. At this moment, the devil introduced itself to him through Emily's words. In the end, he was able to calm her down. As he walked home, she started to peacefully play the piano. Then a piece of graceful music started to come out as if everything was fine again. After that, the scene moves back to the trial where the state lawyer questions the judgment of Emily's father to entrust Emily to Father Moore. He starts to question the knowledge of the father regarding the mental illnesses that Emily possibly has. Shortly after, the anthropologist with expertise in exorcism cases and psychiatry starts her testimony. She explains that possession is a state where a supernatural entity invades a human person. Additionally, Emily was invaded by a demon because she seemed to be a hypersensitive person. Suddenly, the state lawyer requests to stop the testimony of the anthropologist. He thinks that her testimony is ridiculous. However, the judge allows her to proceed to provide an alternative explanation. She explains why Emily's exorcism failed. For her, the drug prescribed by the doctors caused the exorcism to fail because the drugs already intoxicated the brain of Emily. Due to the intoxication, Emily's body was unable to respond during the exorcism, which resulted in her death. At the next trial, the defense attorney lets Father Moore testify in court. In his testimony, he woke up at 3 a.m. during his preparation for the exorcism. He explains that 3 a.m. is the so-called witching hour, where the demons start to mock the Holy Trinity. What's more, it is an inversion of 3 p.m., that is, the considered time of the death of Christ. During that time, he smelled something burning outside. So he walked outside of the room. Outside, the place started to bend over. Then the images around started to bleed in black. That made him run outside in the rain. And there, the devil showed itself in a black robe. Back at the trial, the state lawyer starts to mock his testimony about the appearance of the devil. This makes the judge stop the state lawyer from mocking Father Moore. Then the defense attorney presents a tape recording of Emily's exorcism. As Father Moore plays the recording, the scene moves towards the actual exorcism of Emily. The people who are present during the exorcism are Emily and her father, the doctor, the friend, and Father Moore. At the start of the exorcism, they tied up Emily in the bed. Then Father Moore started to perform the prayer. Suddenly, Emily started to scream in a double voice and smash the head of her father. Meanwhile, Father Moore continued the prayer and asked the name of the demon. In response, Emily started counting to 6 like a dog. This means that there were 6 demons that dwelled inside her. Then the cats attacked Father Moore, making him fall to the ground. Instantly, Emily escaped by jumping through the window. Outside, she ran in the rain towards the barn house. Immediately, the 4 of them followed her. There, Emily screamed like no tomorrow, which scared the horses inside. Then Father Moore asked the doctor to check Emily's vital signs. The doctors found Emily having an extremely high heart rate as Father Moore started the prayer. Meanwhile, there was a seemingly strong force around that made things move. Then creepy animals started walking around the barn house, like snakes and spiders. Shortly after, Father Moore placed a cross on Emily, which made her howl in anguish. Then the 6 demons revealed their names to Father Moore. One of them was Lucifer, the devil in the flesh. After that, the horse started to react in fear. It kicked Emily's father, knocking him down. Meanwhile, the doctor was unable to check the condition of Emily, since he was dazed by the demonic force. In the end, the horses in the barn house ran outside, and Emily fell to the ground. Back at the trial, Father Moore continues to narrate what happens after the exorcism. It turns out that Emily continues to be possessed, making her hurt herself and others. But she refuses another attempt at exorcism. Additionally, he believes that Emily's condition is beyond medical treatment. That's because even during the exorcism, Emily had also taken the drug prescribed by the doctors, and it did not help ease her condition. Therefore, Father Moore and Emily believe that the problem can be conquered only by holding in faith alone. After that, the state lawyer starts to question the validity of the recording. He explains that Emily learns different languages in a religious school. So it explains the capacity of Emily to speak in different languages in the recording. Additionally, he explains that scientifically, humans have 2 vocal cords that enable Emily to speak in a different voice. In the end, the state lawyer seemingly refutes the validity of the recording. So the defense attorney needs to find the doctor present during the exorcism to validate the recording. However, later that day, the doctor dies in an accident, making him unable to testify in court. Later, the defense attorney visits Father Moore to inform him about the death of the doctor. She is in tears as she speaks. At the same time, she thinks that without the doctor's testimony, the case is about to lose. Then, Father Moore gives her a letter and instructs her to read it. Later, as she is about to sleep, she reads the letter in her bed as is told. The following day, the defense attorney hands over the letter to Father Moore and lets him read it at the trial. As it appears, the letter is written by Emily right before her death. In the letter, Emily narrates her miraculous experience right before her death. The letter answers the question of why God allows an innocent girl like Emily to suffer and die. There she narrates that she goes to the spiritual realm, leaving her physical body, as someone calls her from outside. As it turns out, it is Mary, the Holy Mother of God, who calls her. Emily then asks Mary why she suffers in pain. In response, Mary gives Emily a choice, whether to come peacefully in heaven or go back to her body and suffer again. However, by going back to her body, she will be able to testify that the supernatural realm is real. In the end, she chooses to go back to her bodily form to tell the world that demons are real. As she goes back to her body, a stigma suddenly appears in her. In Christian belief, a stigma is a wound similar to the crucifixion of Christ. Also, it signifies the love of God for her. Then Father Moore emotionally reads the ending of Emily's letter that says, "People said that God is dead, but how can they think that if I show them the devil?" This statement means that Emily is testifying to the existence of the supernatural by telling us that demons exist. By affirming the existence of the supernatural, the existence of God becomes possible. In the end, we see that Emily's suffering has a purpose given by God. Similarly, she holds onto her faith, choosing to suffer in order to fulfill this purpose. After Father Moore reads the letter in the trial, everyone seems to be in awe. However, the state lawyer starts to counter Father Moore's claims. According to him, during that moment, Emily tended to hurt herself, so the wounds in her hands might come from the barbed wires in the backyard. This then might refute the claims of Father Moore. To end the prosecution case, he decisively tells the jury that it is a fact that Father Moore neglects the medical needs of Emily, which leads to her death. In response, the defense attorney emotionally tells the jury that based on their case, it is a fact that Father Moore cares for Emily whether demons exist or not. At this moment, we see the focal point of the film, where legality tries to weigh the confrontation between science and religion or reason and faith. In a highly scientific society, it is hard to believe in the existence of the supernatural. However, its existence is still a possibility. At the same time, faith is only possible by leaving the supernatural to the realm of possibilities. Surely, the film is able to raise an important issue on the place of religion in the highly scientific society we live in today. At the end of the trial, the jury ultimately convicts Father Moore of negligence leading to Emily's death. However, the jury's conviction does not include a time in jail as a sentence to Father Moore. This means that in the end, he walks free despite being guilty in the eyes of the law. The movie ends where the defense attorney closes the box containing the case of Father Moore and the exorcism of Emily. As we see at the end, the film is based on real life. In real life, the case files of the trial are examined by medical and anthropological experts. After that, they published a work about Emily's case, which became the basis of this film. This means the story of Emily continues to inspire many people, exactly what she wanted. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.